With us, we've been moving into the DFW market, and everybody, whenever I'm jumping on calls, they're asking me, why am I choosing DFW? And I always say, well, guess what? You don't have to choose DFW. You can choose other markets. So whenever you're going to, help someone choose a market, what are you telling them to look for?
We just went over this on one of our master classes just yesterday, so it's very top of mind because we just went over all this, and I'll kind of break down going wide and then going deep. So normally, common mistakes people make, I'll hit that first. So common mistakes new investors make is they think the grass is greener somewhere else. They live in, Las Vegas, they live in Houston, they live in Columbus, Ohio, and they think that, oh, well, there's no deals that work around here. I have to go to Tampa. I have to go to Dallas. I have to go to wherever because they saw something online, they saw a YouTube video, they read a book, and they think the grass is greener somewhere else. So that is a big mistake because they don't have any competitive advantage in these other markets, and it's a pain in the butt to get to. So what we teach is completely exhaust the area around your house first, in your own backyard. The way we do this is you want to draw a 3 or 4 hour radius around your house and find all the cities and towns that fall into that radius there and completely investigate all them, do all your due diligence on those areas, and completely exhaust that there's no possible markets within a day drive from your house before you even think about going investing somewhere else. Even if the price per unit, which we'll get into later, is more expensive where you're at, you're going to have a competitive advantage in your backyard versus trying to buy something cheaper out of state where you have to get on a plane, hire managers, and all those things. You're going to have a better product and better business plan investing in your backyard. So step one, fully exhaust backyard and investigate that before you even think about going to another market just because you got some hot tip from your brother-in-law's coworker that said Nashville is the next booming city, okay? Those are the people that lose all their money that do that. Second mistake is going a mile wide. And we did this with our company is we figured, oh, well, if we're going to jump on a plane and we're going to check out other markets, well, then I can go anywhere. I can go to Virginia just as easy as I can go to North Carolina, just as easy as I can go to Michigan or Ohio. And so our thought process is, well, if we cast a really wide net, we're going to get a lot of deal flow. And you do get a lot of deal flow because it's a lot more property, a lot more brokers that you can call. It's a lot more deals across your desk, a lot more opportunities for you to look at. And you get a false sense of traction and momentum and success when you start closing some of these deals by going a mile wide. And it's false because what ends up happening is you might actually end up closing a couple of these deals. Maybe you close one in Tennessee, maybe you close one in Florida, maybe you close one in North Carolina, and then next thing you know, you got one in Houston or Austin or something, and you think you're getting a lot of traction, you're getting a lot of momentum, and then what ends up happening is you become the bottleneck because you can't manage that many teams, that many people, that many processes. And for example, if you have 4 properties in 4 states, that's 4 different property managers, 4 different boots on the ground, 4 different sets of contractors, 4 different sets of marketing systems and vendors to manage. That's 4 different states of landlord-tenant laws and economics and economic initiatives that you need to keep track of what's going on in that town and that city. So it becomes very cumbersome to manage, as well as travel. You have to go travel to 4 different cities all the time to keep track of your properties and progress on them and things like that. So going a mile wide does have the kind of false sense of getting momentum and getting success because you start getting a lot of properties, but that you become the bottleneck and you're going to start dropping those plates. It might be 2, 3, 4 properties, but it's going to get very cumbersome very quickly to manage. So the fix for that is to go a mile deep. You pick 1 market, maybe 2 to start out with, and you learn everything there is to know about those markets, and you become absolutely lethal assassin in those markets, and nobody's going to tell you anything that you don't already know. You know every major employer there. You've already talked to the mayor's office. You've talked to Economic Development Board, Chamber of Commerce. You know everything that's going on economically in that area. You know the best school districts. You know the bad neighborhoods, the good streets. You know all the local news, all the major brokers that are there. You're starting to get rapport with the brokers and the agents in that town because you're only dealing with one or two towns, so you're contacting the same brokers and agents over and over again. So you're starting to build rapport and deeper relationships with them. So then you start getting better deals floating to you because, again, you're building deeper relationships there. And then because you're only focusing on one or two markets, you're going to get really, really good at understanding the KPIs, the key performance indicators of those markets. Things like cap rates, price per unit, expense ratios, average rents per square foot or average rents per door. And you're going to get really good at it because you're only focusing on one market. So when you do see an opportunity come across that the cap rate is a little bit higher or the rents are a little bit lower or the price per unit is a little bit lower, you're going to identify that opportunity way faster than your competition and way faster than you would if you were focusing on 4 or 5 different markets. And that's where you become a really good investor, is being able to act quickly with confidence because you're only focusing on one market. So
One of your students is now like, all right, I'm committed to focus on one market. What's your, we go off of tiers, right?
Yes.
We have tier 1 through 3. What's some of the tier 1s, what's some of the tier 2s, what's some of the tier 3s to choosing a market? Which one are you going to focus on and why?
Yep. So once you figure out a market you're going to go into, either we go into a backyard or you're going to pick one or two markets that you're going to travel to. We do the tier method. So not all KPIs or economic indicators are weighted the same. And that's why we came up with the tier system. Tier 1 is job growth, population growth, income growth. If these are not all positive, we do not even look into any tier 3. Those need to be positive indicators, at or above national average. And if it's not, then we're not even interested. We've invested into areas previously where population growth was flat or declining, or job growth was stagnant, or income growth was stagnant. And it is such a tough market, and you get baited into these areas because the cost of the real estate is so cheap. Price per unit, it's like, oh, well, why would I invest in Nashville at whatever price per unit, pick a number, $150,000 per unit, if I can invest in Clarksville right down the road at $100,000 a unit. And there's a big difference between Nashville and Clarksville. And I don't know those areas too specifically, but I'm just using those as example. And there's a reason that the real estate is cheaper. It's because the economy in those areas is not as strong and people don't want to live there. And the people that can afford the higher rents are moving to places like Nashville, right? So first tier is job growth, income growth, population growth. They all have to be positive at or above the national average, and do not get baited into areas that have declining KPIs in these metrics because you are just buying somebody else's headache, and that's what it's going to be. If the area passes that check, the neighborhood, county, city, whatever we're looking at, passes tier 1, then we go into tier 2. Now, tier 2, we start looking at things like crime rates, quality of schools, quality of life, affordability, buying versus selling, median household home values, things like that, to figure out, okay, where really is the good niche of this area. So that'll help us really refine, are we on the right side of the tracks? Are we on the more sought after corner of this neighborhood or town? Is really focusing on the quality of life, schools, crime rates, amenities in the area, and just overall home affordability.
So once, our DFW market, very interesting, right? We got one of the largest metroplexes in the nation, numerous cities, over, a dozen cities that all, came in together, and now there's just this giant metroplex. And each one of these cities offers, something unique, right? So we picked DFW, but now we hyper focusing into, all right, what neighborhoods, what cities, what areas are we going to target? And we picked a few of them, right? And we picked one in particular that it had all this data, path of progress, job growth, everything. But we didn't go necessarily as deep into even like the judicial system. So like, is this renter friendly? Is this, even though the neighborhood up above was landlord friendly, but then this neighborhood this city happened to be more tenant pro tenant, What are your thoughts about teaching somebody how to make sure that they're deep diving far enough, not just tier 1 through tier 3, but there's other things that can impact your real estate?
Well, when it comes to landlord-tenant laws, we did add that to tier 3. So that is one of the tier 3 criteria, along with price per unit, prevailing cap rates for different asset classes in ABC class apartments, price per units for ABC class, and then the landlord-tenant laws are all fall into tier 3. The way to investigate the landlord-tenant, sure, you can go to the city, the county, the state, and figure out what the laws are there, and that'll give you a good idea. You're going to hear things like, oh, well, the grace period for this city or this county or this state is 5-day grace period, and then a 2-week notice to vacate, and then after the 2 weeks clear, you can file for eviction after that. That's going to be like what the black and white laws are. That's not going to be good enough. What you need to do, and the only accurate information I got from this is talking to property managers, multiple property managers, and other investors that own properties in that city. Because what happens is the law might say something black and white, like you or file for eviction after 14 days. But the court system and the judges in that county is who interprets those laws and administer the laws. And that's who matters, because they can do whatever they want. Like, they can give state a 30-day stay every time a resident has an excuse that, oh, my dog got sick and I couldn't pay rent. All right, you can have an extra 30 days. Right? So that's what's really going to happen. So don't stick to just the FHA guidelines for fair housing and landlord-tenant laws for your state. Actually talk to property managers and investors that are investing specifically in that city, in that county, because it's the judges in that city and county that actually have to administer the law and hand out those evictions and give the possession. Because we've run into situations, like you're saying, where the law is black and white, but the judges in that county are very, very resident friendly, and they'll give extensions for anything. And 30-day eviction turns into a 3-month eviction, and you're just eating that on your economic occupancy. So doing your due diligence, that's why it's a tier 3 criteria for us now, is not just reading the black and white laws on the website, it's how are they actually being upheld and administered, and that is very subjective to each judge that's in that area.
All right, so you got an investor student, he comes to you, he's like, Vince, I got this thing under contract, excited, ready to move forward, and tier 1 through tier 3 seems the match, and then you go in and you're having trouble leasing. You take over, let's go over the takeover process, what everyone needs to expect, because it takes longer, at least in our market, to lease up than what most people anticipate. Mm-hmm. And then let's talk about absorption. We got hit in a very good market with slow absorption. And so let's hit on those two things.
To lead into those two things of leasing up, absorption, things like that, the error that an investor would make that gets caught in that situation is because they didn't do enough boots on the ground research. And this is a very, very big thing with newer investors as well, is they get too comfortable underwriting properties and doing due diligence from behind a computer screen. And they're like, oh, well, my Excel spreadsheet says that this deal is going to be a home run. Or I went to this website and it says that the occupancy in this area, or my CoStar report or Crexi report, is, the occupancy is 92%, so I'm good. But those are going to be very broad stroke indicators for your market. You can't get too comfortable underwriting properties and investing from behind a computer screen. Is if everything checks out under your initial screening and your KPIs and say, all right, this could be a good deal, you have to go there. You have to walk the property. You have to walk the neighborhood. You got to walk up and down the street and figure out who your neighbors are. Is there train tracks next door? Is there trap houses next door? Is there a warehouse with heavy machinery going off at 5 a.m. next door? There's all these factors that can affect it. Some of the ones that affected us was the KPIs were fantastic, off the charts for KPIs that we had, but there was berm, this hill that guarded the property from the major highway. And at first during due diligence, we're like, oh, well, that's going to be good because of sound. Everybody doesn't want to be next to a big highway because of the noise pollution and the highway and the trucks and everything like that. So the hill provides fantastic quality of life to the residents. The downside of that is nobody knows our property is there. So we have to do extra marketing because from the road, the highway there, they can't see us. So we have to get bigger signs out front. We have to spend more money on online marketing. So that was some of that boots on the ground that we missed a little bit on that one, which caused our vacancy rate and our lease up rate and stuff like that to slow down. But the main error there was that I see a lot of investors is they get too comfortable from investing behind a computer screen, and they don't spend enough time in the market, driving the town, figuring out everything there is, driving the neighborhoods, walking around, talking to residents that are in there, talking to go to gas stations, talk to the people at gas stations, go get food at diners, talk to the waitresses, and ask them really how is it to live in these towns and what they should know, because they're going to tell you everything. The cashiers at the stores, go get your hair done if you have to. Hairdressers love to talk. So all these little secrets that I have to figure out what the real scoop is of where the good neighborhoods, bad neighborhoods are, and if you're not familiar with the area. So how that affects absorption is if you don't do good boots on the ground investigations on your due diligence, you're going to run into issues with absorption and vacancy, because you might not know that a brand new property is getting put up in 6 months next door, and they're going to steal a bunch of tenants because they're going to be doing a bunch of marketing and leasing and concessions and things like that to fill up their units. You're gonna feel that in your vacancy until that property is your competition is absorbed, and then the vacancy rates can recover. So best thing to do is prevent that rather than have to deal with it after.
And then, the ultimate killer, OpEx, operating expense right now, right? I don't care what market you're in. If you're not controlling this, you are going to be not in a good position. So what are you doing to, a lot of these people are managing, a lot of your students aren't managing the properties themselves, they're using third party. How are you controlling OpEx with a third party property manager on site?
Very tough to do. So the best thing you can do that we found, and we've done both third party, it's where we started, and then now we're vertically integrated, so we have our own property management company. And the best things I have for that is you're going to do your due diligence on what OpEx per unit, so the operational expense on a per unit basis for the class of property that you're trying to get. So if you're trying to buy a C-class property in Ocean City, Maryland or something, you need to build a operational expense on a per unit scale for C-class properties in Ocean City. You can't take numbers from just Maryland. You can't take numbers from just the East Coast. You can't take numbers just from C-class properties in the country. You have to pick as local as possible. What does C-class properties in Ocean City, Maryland cost on a per unit scale? And it's going to take you a lot of underwriting to get this. Good ways to start building this list of this average is going to be underwriting a lot of deals, looking at a lot of OMs, offering memorandums from brokers, and start tracking as they're sending out T12s, trailing 12-month profit loss statements, and offering memorandums. You're going to start tracking what other properties in that market are reporting for their operational expenses, and then you're going to start coming up with an average of what a unit should cost on OpEx per door. That's the number that you need. That's going to be your safety net. That's going to be your baseline KPI for going into building your business plan, is because if you look at 50 properties and C-class properties in Ocean City or wherever, and their OpEx per door is $7,200 per unit per year, and all 50 of them are pretty much average out to that number, then that's going to be your baseline number, is to say, all right, I need to underwrite to this number. Maybe I can beat it by 5%, 10%, but make that the icing on the cake. Your base case should be the average OpEx per door that is already proven in that area by looking at a lot of properties and documenting them, start tracking them, and coming up with an average. That's part one. Part two is if you have to use third party, it's going to be extremely hard because it's not their property. They do not care. It's not their money. They don't make any less money because they spent all yours, because property managers are paid off of what revenue they collect, right? So they are not incentivized whatsoever to keep a good budget, and always remember that part. So the best thing to do is you have your number. Say we came up to $7,200 per door on a C-class property. That's what you underwrote to. That's your business plan is hit that average because you looked at a bunch of properties and that's the average. You're then going to go to that third-party property manager and say, all right, hey, I'm looking to buy this property. I want you to come up with a budget and have them come up with the budget for that property, because now this is their work. This is their underwriting. This is their pro forma, and they are going to have ownership in that. And if they don't have ownership, they're at least going to have accountability. And they're going to come up with a number, and you're going to work back and forth with them. Maybe they came up with $7,000, and it's a little bit lower than yours, and you're going to talk to them, negotiate with them, and come up with a number and say, hey, I think the budget should be 72, and work back and forth on that, and then come up with a final budget that they own because they've helped create it, the third-party property manager, and they're going to sign off and say that they here's the official budget for this property, $7,200, $7,100, whatever it is. Now they should have accountability and ownership of that budget because they created it. So in 6 months, 8 months, 1 year from now, where they're over budget, they can't use the excuse that you gave them an unrealistic expectation because they created the budget and they approved it. And that's one of the most common excuses I have from third-party property managers is I gave them an unrealistic target to achieve for budget constraints. And reality is they just weren't using it at all, and they weren't tracking it. And because, again, not their money, they're not incentivized to do that. So that is my best tip for that, is to you come up with your numbers, be confident in it, have them create their own budget, have them take ownership of it, and hold them accountable to the budget that they create. And we do weekly calls to make sure that they are tracking expenses and the other KPIs weekly, and then the monthly reconciliations. But that's my best tip for that, is have them be a part of the creation of that.
Excellent. And now, just to give y'all Vince's secret weapon, if you guys DM us or message us here below, free deal analyzer tool, we're going to give you what Vince uses to actually underwrite these deals, talking about cash flow, is this a good deal or not, any sort of red flags. This is what you're going to be able to utilize. Stop wasting your time with over-analyzing, getting that paralysis, cut through all the red tape, get it right here from Vince, the free deal analyzer tool. And what tips do you have for them, Vince, when utilizing your underwriting model?
When using underwriting models, a lot of people get too caught up or they get too stressed out, especially if you're not good with Excel. Definitely not something to stress out about if you're not good with Excel. You're going to need basic formula stuff. The way that I underwrite is I just think about it like a bunch of levers. So when you're formulating a deal and you're stacking a deal together, your underwriting tool, and there's no best underwriting tool. It's your understanding of how these levers work. If I move price up and down a little bit, if I move cap rate up and down a little bit, if I move rents up and down a little bit, that's where the value comes in. There's not a magic tool out there for this, no matter what people try to pitch or try to say. It's your understanding about how the formulas work. A lot of these underwriting tools are very, very similar. I think ours is very, very good, but the underwriting tool is not the secret weapon. It's your understanding of the different levers of how to put a deal together, and these levers inside of the underwriting tools, that is the secret weapon. So your levers are going to be your price. Obviously, if my price goes up or down, my returns are going to go up and down. Cap rate, another really big lever, is if my cap rate goes up, the price is going to go down. My cap rate goes down, the price is going to go up. That's another big one. You have your rent growth assumption. So if my rent is going to grow 3% a year, 2% a year, that's a lever that you can put up and down. Your starting rents versus stabilized rents, understanding all what that effect is. So I'm not going to go over all of them on here, but the main point is these underwriting models. Just think about it in your head. Like you just have this mad scientist machine thing, and it's just you're sitting there moving all the levers to get the right formula, and that's what you're doing as you're building a pro forma. And then the best thing to do is you think about it like that, and then you have to be able to step away from the underwriting and then come back to it with a clear head and a sanity check. And if it's not you, maybe have a partner look at it, because it's very, very, very easy to fool yourself into creating a good deal out of a crappy deal, because it only takes a couple keystrokes on a keyboard in Excel to make this, hunk of crap deal look like a home run. So a lot of people, especially newer investors, they can get so caught up in the spreadsheets that they create a deal that works when it shouldn't work. So a good practice when you're starting off is to plug all the numbers in, get the price and all the assumptions in the right spots, step away from it for a while, maybe an hour or two, maybe a day or two, or kick it over to a business partner with a fresh set of eyes so they can double check your work. They can double check your assumptions that you put in there, your rent growth, your pro forma rents, your OPEX per door, things like that, your stabilization period, your vacancy rates, all those levers that are in there that financially engineer a deal, and they can check all that, or you can come back and check all that with a fresh set of eyes to make sure that you didn't get overzealous and create a good deal when it shouldn't be a good one, because a lot of people will do that and then they'll invest and then they'll lose all their money because they can't actually realize their pro forma in real life, because a couple extra keystrokes on a keyboard fooled them into thinking it was a good deal. So a lot of people lose their money by being too confident on Excel.
Excellent. Again, if you want this tool, DM us, message us, Deal Analyzer, and we'll be happy to give you this free copy. You learned it right here from Vince, a man that has over 100 million in real estate. I learned everything directly from him. Definitely the tool can help you, but I would actually say the true secret weapon is mentorship, just like I learned right here from Vince. Stop guessing, learn our systems, use our tools, our strategies, start selecting winners. And if you want this tool, just DM us Deal Analyzer, and we'll be happy to share it with you.